So is the Rosneft deal, and indeed Bob Dudley himself, good for BP? Just want to get the thoughts now of energy analyst Dougie Youngson from Arbuthnot Securities. He cut his recommendation on BP from buy to sell in June of last year. He's now one of just 2 analysts who are still advising their clients to offload BP stock. Great to see you. Thanks very much for coming in. So is this the right way forward? Does it make sense for BP to attempt to buy out its Russian partners TNK-BP at any cost to save this Rosneft deal?
Well, it does feel that the TNK-BP joint venture is somewhat soured by this deal with Rosneft. Here we are 5 months after the announcement of the transaction, and we're still no further forward in trying to find out where the transaction actually is. There's already been one extension, and if the deadline tonight passes, there could well be a second extension or some sort of restructuring of the deal. So you don't, even if the deadline tonight passes, the deal won't necessarily collapse? It won't necessarily collapse, but I think after 2 extensions, some sort of restructuring will probably take place. And what is the risk of BP overpaying to buy out TNK-BP, its Russian partners right now, because they offered, what, $27 billion last month? That was rejected. Yeah, that's right. There's a real danger that BP can't actually pay for the transaction itself. You know, it's still trying to pay for the Macondo incident, and clearly some sort of rights issue or some sort of buyout in conjunction with Rosneft would be probably the only way that such a transaction could be completed. I mean, CEO Bob Dudley, we're hearing they're very keen to pass this deal as part of restoring the company's reputation after the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, and very much putting his strategic stamp on the company as well. So how does this affect him if the deal doesn't go through in terms of investor shareholder confidence in him? Well, that's exactly the point. If the transaction doesn't happen, then there's a question mark as to his strategic vision for the company moving forward. Really, a lot of people questioned this move in the first place, given his track record when he was head of TNK previously. It was a difficult relationship, and him moving back into Russia was questioned at the time. I mean, the deal is also aimed at replacing lost production from the Deepwater Horizon rig explosion and making up for other assets that have had to be sold off. From what you know, the details, how lucrative a deal could it be potentially? Because I've actually spoken to a couple of shareholders who said, listen, we're not going to be cut up if the deal doesn't go through, because actually there's a lot of uncertainty as to how profitable it's going to be at the end of the day. And anyway, there are risks when it comes to investing in a place like Russia. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just that, it's just the fact that no one's explored in the Arctic before. People think there's a lot of potential there, but until you start drilling, we don't actually know. So it could well be that the Arctic exploration factor may be a bit of a damp squib if they don't find anything. You have a sell recommendation on the stock. Do you plan on keeping it that way? For the short term, yes. Could the fact that we were just saying that BP's share price hasn't fully recovered, could that also represent a good buying opportunity for many investors? I think some people do think about it this way, but really, until we get the whole Russian situation sorted out, it's difficult to see where BP's going strategically and what happens next. And given the magnitude of the Gulf of Mexico oil disaster, and given the fact that we were speaking about possible bankruptcy for this company, okay, the share price hasn't completely rebounded. There is a lot of uncertainty. The situation for BP could have been a lot worse, right? Yeah. They haven't done too badly. Not too badly, but you know, you would hope that the share price would have recovered more than it has so far.